8th of December 2019, it was the last time Celtic fans would have been present at Hampden Park to watch Celtic play football. Rangers 0, Celtic 1, 51,117 attended that day to see Celtic win the League Cup, in a game which, let's be honest, Celtic shouldn't have won, but Neil Lennon managed to do it, and it was the first trophy of a quadruple treble winning season for Celtic. Little did fans expect that later that season we would be stripped away from the arenas, there would be no fans and football would stop, and we'd see empty stadiums for the next sort of 18 months. Since then, Celtic have barely played at Hampden, only twice being in front of an empty stadium, once winning the Scottish Cup at an empty Hampden Park, but last season in domestic competition, Celtic never made it to Hampden in either the League or Scottish Cup, so it's a triumphant return in the 2021-22 season to take on St Johnstone. In the same competition Celtic won the last time fans were there, they have the chance to put themselves into the final, but only 7 of the 18 players that were involved in the squad that day we played Rangers now remain at Celtic. Many of them, 11 of them, have moved on to different ventures, and Celtic look completely different from what they did that day. Not to forget that the manager as well has changed. Neil Lennon gone, Ange Postecoglou in. If you told us this on the 8th of December 2019, I think you would have struggled to believe it. It doesn't feel like it's been that long, but yet it feels like an eternity, and it's only a bit of fun. But today we're going to sit down and look, where are they now? The squad that took on Rangers that day at Hampden, where are they? What are they doing? What you up to? Fraser Forster, he was man of the match that day. He was the guy that probably won Celtic the Betfred Cup, as it was then called. His performance that day was incredible, keeping out Alfredo Morelos left, right and centre, saving a penalty as well. He was the man of the match. He revived his career at Celtic in the 2019-20 campaign, but at the end of that season he opted to return to Southampton to try and fight for his place in the first team squad. It's safe to say it hasn't turned out that well for Fraser Forster. He could have come back to Celtic and maybe forged on a bit of a career up here, but went back, and since that move he's only played 16 times in the past 18 months, most of them coming in cup competition. If you said to me that day that Jeremy Frimpong would have been playing for Bayer Leverkusen in the Bundesliga no more than 2 years later, then I would have been laughing at you. I wouldn't have believed you, but here we are, 2 years on. Jeremy Frimpong's at Bayer Leverkusen in the Bundesliga, where he's made 21 appearances in Germany's top flight since joining. It was a surprise when he left in January of 2021 for a fee of around £11 million, but he's living life and he's doing really well. Fair play to him. He's playing in one of the best divisions in the world with a solid coach, a solid team around him, and he's already made his debut as well for the Holland under-21s since leaving Celtic. So, you know, he's been doing quite well, and we'll see him again next week when Celtic take on Bayer Leverkusen. Christopher Jullien, the goal scorer that day against Rangers, the man who won the cup with the goal, but now dead. Not actually dead, but you know, you could say that because we've rarely seen him since. Struggled big time with injuries over the past sort of year. He did return, of course, in the 2021 campaign and then was out again. A guy who was solid at this point in time for Celtic and looked like our best centre-back, now in a position where he may struggle to get back into the team. But someone loved and adored by Celtic fans, a man who scored that day in goal will be remembered for a long time. It'll be interesting to see when he comes back. Christopher Ajer, he was potentially the player of the season in the 2020-21 campaign, but did leave Celtic with only a year left on his deal at the start of this season. He went to Brentford for a fee of around £13.5 million and has so far made 7 appearances for a very impressive Brentford side in the Premier League. Recently he did suffer a hamstring injury which has seen him sidelined for a little bit, but he's due to return anytime soon, and I'm sure he'll be a great asset once more for Brentford. He's looked really at home in Frank's side, and he's been getting really good ratings from the Brentford support and Premier League critics, so fair play to him. We always knew there was a player in there, and it was only a matter of time before he did leave Celtic, but yeah, we've moved on. Johnny Hayes, you'll remember the love I had for this man if you've been watching long enough. He's a a sort of cult hero of mine, but his contract expired at the end of the 2019-20 campaign, and I almost thought that Neil Lennon would have kept him on for the 10 in a row season, but he didn't. He let him go, and he returned to the club we signed him from, Aberdeen, where he's done a great job, to be quite honest. He's done a solid job, at least, for Aberdeen since moving back there. 29 Premiership appearances last season, 12 so far this season, of course, in that transition under Stephen Glass. And at the age of 34, he's still kicking a ball. He's still getting that team every week, and he's been a real asset to them. He's someone who drew a little bit of an argument from Celtic fans of whether he should have stayed or not at that moment in time, but I think that at the age of 34 he is at the level that I think most would expect him to play at. Scott Brown, he's playing with Johnny Hayes, and 2 years ago, if you told me that him and Johnny Hayes would still be playing together at Aberdeen, I would have also laughed. That would have been something completely out of the question. I wouldn't have seen Scott Brown playing anywhere but Celtic. I would have seen Scott Brown finishing his career at Celtic, but things just didn't pan out that way. After captaining Celtic to 9 in a row, a quadruple treble, the 2021 campaign, as we know, didn't go the way Scott Brown would have liked to, and the last trophy he won with Celtic was at an empty Hampden Park. Captain Invincible left and is doing okay now at Aberdeen. He's been one of the better players in what's been an up and down season, and he's still scoring goals against Rangers. You know, following on from that famous one all those years ago at Ibrox, he managed to do it this season. So yeah, well done, Bruni. Callum McGregor, the man is still here, he's always here, and God bless him. A huge contract for him recently, and also appointed the new captain of Celtic Football Club. He took over the reins of Scott Brown and has put himself down as a Celtic legend. Someone who, you know, was touted with maybe a move down to England at some point. He's managed to last it out from that Betfred Cup final, and he's here, and he's one of our best players, one of our most important players, and he's probably one of the huge factors in the future of Celtic Football Club, one of the huge characters in there, and I'm glad that he's still here because he's a player of top quality. He's Mr. Consistent, and he's been shown it at both club and international level as of late. Another guy who's still here and been here for a long time, James Forrest. He's recently returned from an injury that kept him on the sidelines throughout the 2021 campaign. He did struggle with fitness issues, he struggled with injuries, and we haven't seen him as frequently as we'd expect over the past couple of seasons. Will he get back into the Celtic side with Liela Bad and such playing well? I feel like 1920 was the last time we seen the proper James Forrest, the James Forrest we all know, the James Forrest who was trying to make himself a legend at Celtic. He's not quite been that since. We'll have to wait and see, we have to be patient, but he's still here, he's stayed loyal to the club, and fair play to him. Ryan Christie left Celtic, of course, at the start of this season as well, for a fee of around £2.5 million to go to Bournemouth in the English Championship after a very sort of frustrating 2021 campaign. A guy who around the sort of 1920 season started to make himself a kind of regular name on the team sheet. Last season, a lot of fans lost patience with him, shooting from range constantly, poor passing, just a poor ability it seemed at times in the game. He did leave and is now at Bournemouth, 12 appearances so far. He's been very impressive for them, trying to get promoted to the Premier League. He's also been important to Steve Clarke's Scotland side, but someone who split a lot of opinion between Celtic fans. Mohamed El Yunusi, God love you, I miss you so much. A guy who I wish could have stayed at Celtic so much longer, and a guy that I wish I could have seen firsthand more often than I did. Of course, that opportunity was cut short when COVID struck, but he did stay with Celtic beyond the 1920 campaign. He stayed for the 2021 campaign, where I personally thought he was one of the better players in the Celtic side, and someone who I would kill to have now with Ange Postecoglou. He returned to Southampton, sadly, as I said, at the end of last season, when it took a little bit of a while to get involved in Ralph Hasenhüttl's plans, but he is now in that team. He scored a hat-trick against Newport County in the League Cup, which means that he is now getting some regular game time for the Saints. And yeah, he's performing well for his country too. He's just a generally very impressive footballer, very talented footballer, and people are seeing that at Southampton, so I'm glad that he's making a bit of a name for himself. And the last player who started that day, Christ, do you remember? Up front, Lewis Morgan. Now, we beat Rangers starting Lewis Morgan up front that day. That is hilarious to me, because that is just just unbelievable. Of course, Edouard was touch and go with fitness at the time, and we had to panic, we had to scramble, and Lewis Morgan did start. He left only a month later to join David Beckham's Inter Miami in the MLS, where he's played 58 times and scored 7. Playing actually in his position on the left wing, which has been great. He's played alongside some great players though, just to name a couple: Gonzalo Higuain and Blas Matuidi. Two very, very talented footballers, two of the best players to play in the continent and Europe over the past few years, and he's played alongside them. A World Cup winner and a player like Gonzalo Higuain, it doesn't get much better than that, especially when you're living life in a city like Miami. It's gorgeous. I'd rather be at Celtic right enough playing in the Premiership here, but you know what? You could have worse moves. And when you look at the bench that day, only 4 of the 7 still remain with the club. Nir Bitton, Tom Rogic, Mikey Johnson and Bolly Bolingoli. And Cham is of course gone. He's now with Swansea City in the Championship in England. Odsonne Edouard making a real good name for himself at Crystal Palace in the English Premier League. And Craig Gordon now with Hearts in the Scottish Premiership, and now Scotland's #1 as well, where he has had a great revival of his career after being benched for Fraser Forster that season. But that's it. That's the Celtic team. How different it is now is unbelievable, but it's the Ange Postecoglou revolution, and I'm all in, baby. If you've enjoyed, make sure to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.